We are approaching the topic of conditional statement. Those statements allow to execute part of the script only if a given condition is true. So, as you see, we need to be able to define conditions and to check if the condition is fulfilled, true, or not, false. This lesson will present how to check if a condition is met or not. In general, there are three methods allowing to check a condition. We can use command test, or use square brackets, or use double square brackets. We will discuss them here. A lot of valuable information related to how to build the logical expressions can be found in the manual for the command test. Normally, test does not show anything on the screen, at least until it's used correctly. Instead of that, it returns 0 or non-zero. 0 should be interpreted as true and a non-zero value as false. The condition that should be checked by test can also be a result returned by another command. In such case, all will depend on the value returned by such external program. However, in this lesson we are going to discuss logical expressions, so to negate a condition, it can be preceded by exclamation mark. To evaluate if two conditions are true, we should use the operator -a, like AND. To evaluate if at least one condition is true, we should use the operator -o, like OR. There is also a series of operators that allow to work with texts. -n returns true if the string is non-empty. -z returns true if the string is empty. To compare two strings, we use equality sign or exclamation sign, equality sign. To compare numbers, we need to use very strange notation. To determine if two numbers are equal, use EQ. To check if one condition is greater than the other, use GT. To check if one number is greater or equal than the other, use GE. To check if one number is less or equal to the other, use LE. To check if it's lower, use LT. To confirm that we have not equal values, use NE. Why the notation is so strange? The reason is that the popular symbols like lower than or greater than are reserved for redirecting input and output. So, if used here, they would need to be quoted. Instead of quoting, it's better to use the shown here two-character symbols. Tests can be done also on files. To check if a file exists and it is a directory, use -d. To check if a file exists and it is a normal file, use -f. To check if a file exists and a specific user is the owner of the file, use -o. Permissions can be checked also with -r, -w, -x. So let's start testing and comparing. Let's test existence of the files. To check if on our system we have a file etc password and if it's a normal file, use option F. The command was executed, but how to check the result? The return code can be found in the variable $?. The result is 0, so the test was successful. But if I change the test and I will check if the directory -etc is a normal file, the result is 1, so false. So let's see if etc is a directory. The result is 0. And is etc password a directory? No, it's not. As mentioned, the tests could be done using a simpler syntax with square brackets. Is etc password a normal file? Yes. And is etc a normal file? No. Note that this syntax requires from me to add a space after and before the square brackets. Would I remove them, I will have an error. Be aware of that. And now the syntax with double square brackets. We can test again the etc is not a normal file and etc password is a normal file. For the moment, no difference between the single or double brackets, but that will change shortly. Test is an external command, a file on a disk that needs to be loaded into memory and started when the test is done. In case of square brackets, all happens internally in bash, that's internal command. Let's show how to compare texts. Here we have a variable a with the value of a and variable b with value b. To check if A is equal A, I can write test $A equals $A. The additional spaces are important, don't skip them. Nothing was displayed, that's good, but we can check the result in $question mark. 0 means that the values are equal. Is A equal B? No, they aren't. Let's see if the A is greater than B in alphabetical order, and we will do it using syntax with square brackets. As I want to use the greater than, I need to quote the redirection character. I need to use backslash. The result is false. A is not greater than B. And is A lower than B? 0, true. In alphabetical order, A is lower than B. Can we use this method to compare something that could be understood as a number? Mathematically, one could say that the values are equal, but when treating them as strings, they are not equal. If we would use a double square bracket syntax, all will work in the same way. Now, let's see how to compare numbers. We will compare x and y. Is x less than y? 0, true. And is x equal to x? I'm using syntax with square bracket. The result is true. Is x equal to y? False. And is x not equal to y? The answer is true. Yes, those numbers are different. Note that operator presented here cannot be used to compare text. Comparison like that will end with an error. Now we will use operator z and n. Z tests if a text is empty and n checks if a text variable is non-zero, not empty. Those operators are problematic, that's why we handle them separately. Here we have two variables, one is empty and the other has a value. Is the empty variable indeed empty? 0, true. Is the non-empty variable empty? 1, false. It is not. Good. So let's continue. Is the empty variable non-empty? The expected value should be 1, false, but the command returns 0, true. Why? That's a common problem. A variable that is empty may be not visible to the command at all. It will be different when we use additional quotes. Now test knows that a string value should be tested. Now the result is correct. Good. When working with test, the text should be enclosed in quotes. If it is not in quotes, sometimes it will not work correctly, and it is very easy to forget about it. Let's see if the non-empty variable is indeed not empty, and this time we will be using the additional quotes. True. That function will work also correctly with a variable without quotes, but that's just our luck and not a rule. The syntax with single square brackets works in the same way. When we check if the empty variable is empty, we have result true. But if we check if the empty is not empty, we have true again. What is not correct? To correct the situation, it's enough to add quotes, but we need to remember about that. And how to work with double square brackets. Is empty text empty? True. Is empty text not empty? False. That makes difference. The syntax correctly recognized that the variable is empty without any additional quotes. I think I like double brackets. This method can be also used to check if the variable exists at all. Our variable is named not empty, but if I make a typo and I write non-empty, then the test will correctly find out that this value does not exist. I can also test if such variable is empty. It does not exist, so it's empty. Test with -z works correctly. The presented here methods can be used to evaluate more complicated expressions. This is an example of the conjunction. Is 10 greater than 1 and 100 is greater than 99? The both parts of the conjunction are true, so the conjunction is true as well. And what will happen if I modify one of the tests? Left side is still true, but the right side is false. When connecting them with AND, the result is false. But if I change the operator AND to OR, so the operator A to operator O, the result will be true. Let's make a quick test of the syntax with square bracket. The conjunction returns false, and the alternative returns true. And what about double square bracket? Unfortunately, that operation ends with error. The syntax does not understand the option A. Instead of A, we should use double AND. The syntax is similar to C or C++, so programmers should not complain. Similar change will be required for OR. Option O is not recognized. Instead, we should use double pipe. Now, all is okay. Why have we 3 methods for doing the same? When should we use each of them? Test is the oldest method. It is not convenient. It is an external command, but it has a nice help. If possible, try to avoid using the pure test syntax. Single square bracket is the ancestor of test. The expressions that should be evaluated are the same as in the test command, but the syntax is much easier. Just expression enclosed in the brackets. If you have any developer experience, then surely you already used if statement followed by a condition enclosed in brackets. It is short, nice, readable, generally much better than test. But single square bracket has a disadvantage when checking if the variable is empty. We need to remember to use the quotes. That's why we have double square brackets, a younger brother of the single square bracket. Here there is no problem with interpretation of an empty text. Also, the more complicated logical expressions can use the doubled AND or pipe symbols. Would be nicer if the option -A and -O would be understood as well, but it is how it was designed and we cannot change it. So generally, if only possible, try to use a double brackets notation. Should your script be run on an older system that doesn't support the double brackets, use single brackets. That's the rule of thumb. Having discussed the test command, we can present the conditional statement. See you in the next lesson.